Welcome back, horror fans, cinephiles, and Giallo enthusiasts. Our next stop on our journey through Giallo cinema is the second Giallo film, and the first one in color. This video will cover some technical aspects surrounding the film and its production, as well as its reception. Nothing too laden in my opinions just yet. That will follow in my review video next time. Here is Blood and Blacklace Overview. Mario Bava's next Giallo, the first full-length one in color, was Blood and Blacklace. Bava had just finished The Whip and the Body, 1963, and his newest film would be his most contemporary, as well as his most savage to date. Despite the film not being a hit in Italy at the time of its release, the film proved to be a template for Italian filmmakers who would come years later when they took their shots at making Giallo films. The film surprisingly did well in America, and its success prompted American distributors Bernard and Lawrence Woolner to try to entice Mario Bava to move to the States to begin making films, an offer which Bava refused, opting instead to remain in Italy working with his loyal crew, where he could continue making films without interference from the producers. Originally titled Six Women for the Murderer, the screenplay was written by Bava with Marcello Fondato and Giuseppe Barilla, and it is both intense yet simple. It is packed with red herrings, but the film avoids being melodramatic, and by the time we get to the reveal, it is rather logical and demands repeat viewings, which the film does indeed hold up upon subsequent viewings. Blood and Blacklace doesn't focus too much on the mystery, but rather the beautiful murder set pieces, which tend to occur in regular intervals, much like a musical peppered with songs every 10 minutes. The film plays with the theme of the destruction of beauty, exemplified right away with the first killing, where we see a woman not stabbed nor strangled, but throttled and beaten against the hard surface of a tree repeatedly. Later, another woman's face is clawed by a spiked implement, and another has her face pushed into and pressed upon a red-hot oven. The victims not only are murdered horrifically, but beautifully, as they are left in morbidly stylized poses, a style that Dario Argento would later emulate. And whereas these kills are graphic, they are not particularly bloody, but draw on a macabre sensuousness from the act of their physicality, almost like a stage play with murder set pieces. And despite not having buckets of blood, the red lights and red color palette of the film, found predominantly in the lipstick, nail polish, and the draperies throughout the salon, accentuate the implied gore and brutality, while simultaneously evoking violence and fiery passion. Steeped in duplicity, the characters of Blood and Blacklace are mostly selfish and sketchy, and the person the audience is meant to sympathize with is the Countess Christina, played by Eva Bartok. Christina is inundated in a world of greed and avarice, and she is ultimately a victim to her emotions, taken by them and dangerously at their mercy whenever they change. Her lover, on the other hand, Massimo, played by Cameron Mitchell, is the true embodiment of someone who uses others to get what he wants, and he is consistent with his desires for money and power. The rest of the cast is heavily involved in a ring of sex and drug use, and the lens through which Bava observes them reflects a cynical world of corrupted individuals, the events therein showcasing an attitude towards the characters that is frigidly cold and indifferent. Bava would use this same idea going forward in his other Giallo films, establishing here in Blood and Blacklace that happy endings are for Disney movies, not Giallo films. In short, the aesthetic of the film is lush and vibrant, and the professional use of depth in the shots adds a quality of three-dimensionality. You wouldn't know it from watching the film, but Bava apparently used a toy wagon as a dolly for the camera to glide around the set, because the budget did not allow for professional equipment. The film is teeming with imagery as well. The very setting of the cultured and sophisticated salon with striking color, masterful lighting and shadows creates a world that is both gorgeous and evil. Beautiful, yet sinister. The opening shot of the sign on the front gate, flailing in the wind before ultimately ripping off of its rigging and tossing about, suggests an unhinged mind. The English dubbed version does not do the film or the actors justice. Cameron Mitchell had a wonderful career in the decades prior, but money troubles would force him to work overseas. He worked with Bava previously on Eric the Conqueror, 1961, and later in Knives of the Avenger, 1966. He is arguably best known for the Broadway original production of Death of a Salesman. Mitchell later reprised the role of Happy Loman in Laszlo Benedek's 1951 film adaptation. Horror fans might know him from The Toolbox Murders, 1978. Ava Bartok excels in her role and displays considerable depth of emotion and characterization, masterfully gliding between the melodramatic and the subtle. Thomas Reiner plays Inspector Silvestri and likely was cast to appease the German co-financiers. His portrayal is rather stiff, and whether this was an intentional acting choice is up for debate. He is classically trained, after all. Returning from The Girl Who Knew Too Much is Dante Di Paolo as Franco, the drug addict, who steals the scenes every time he is on screen, wonderfully juxtaposing Reiner's performance. Luciano Pigozzi, under an alias as Alan Collins, plays Cesare and would go on to be in numerous Giallo films in the future, dubbed the Italian Peter Lorre. Development of the film began after Bava parted ways with Galatea Film, where he established himself as a director and a cinematographer for many years. For the rest of his career, Bava would have to jump from producer to get his films financed. In the early days, Blood and Blacklace went by the working title of The Fashion House of Death. You likely wouldn't know it, but the film had a significantly lower budget than Bava's previous films, 180 million lira compared to Black Sabbath's 205 million lira. The movie was in fact an international co-production and was co-financed by Italian, French, and West German entities, 50% from Italy, 20% from France, and 30% of the budget from West Germany. For the Italian, Emepi Cinematografica, the French Les Productions Georges de Beauregard, and German Monarchia Film. This fact interestingly suggests the very genesis of Giallo cinema, being a co-product of Italian Il Giallo Mondadori books, French Grand Guignol, and Les Diaboliques by Henri-Georges Clouzot, and German Krimi films of the current decade. Obviously, there are more influences than those, but regardless, suffice it to say that the first stylistically true Giallo ought to be a product of some of the most influential nations to the cinematic genre. Bava's cast and crew were seasoned veterans of his, working with him already on several of his projects. The cast was both international and multilingual, and the actors either read their lines fluently, whereas others read them aloud phonetically. The Italians were Arianna Giorini, Massimo Ricci, Franco Resel, Luciano Pigozzi, Giuliano Raffaelli, Francesca Ungaro, and Enzo Ceresico. Americans Cameron Mitchell, Mary Arden, Dante Di Paolo, and Harriet White Medden. Germans Thomas Reiner, Leah Lander, and Heidi Stroh. The one French actress was Claude Dante, and the one Hungarian-British actress was Ava Bartok. Blood and Blacklace has been cited as the evolution of thriller cinema, merging the trends of West German Krimi films with the types of plots of the Italian Il Giallo Mondadori books of the early part of the century, and the erotic and violent nature of the fumetti neri pulp comics of the decade. The film premiered on March 14, 1964 in Rome, but was unsuccessful commercially, meaning it would not start any cinematic trends. Not yet, at least. Despite not generating a lot of money, Bava was commended for his visual style and direction, although some found the plot and the characters to be weak and left more to be desired. After Dario Argento's The Bird with the Crystal Plumage 1970, the Giallo craze would begin, and eager directors would find themselves visually molding their films off of Blood and Blacklace, using it as a template more so than The Bird with the Crystal Plumage. The film to this day is regarded as a must-see and a staple of Giallo cinema, and even considered to be one of the best slasher films, although the movie was about 15 years early for the slasher genre. And although it differs in numerous ways from the German Krimi films, Blood and Black Lace could just as easily be defined as a fringe krimi film. Thanks again for watching. Please like this video, share it with your friends if they are horror fans or cinephiles, subscribe to The King in Giallo if you haven't yet, and ring that notification bell. And if you have any questions, thoughts, curiosities, or concerns, leave those below in the comments section and I will get back to you. Give The King in Giallo a follow on Instagram and a like on Facebook. Next time on The King in Giallo will be the review for Blood and Black Lace. Thank you very much for your continued support. This is Tanner Leeser for The King in Giallo, and if nothing else, I'll see you next time.
Open your eyes, you idiot. Look at him.